There are too many injury updates to count at this point, but of course that's why I wait until every Saturday to go through every matchup to find the must start and sit wide receivers for any week of fantasy football, and we're doing it for week 9 right now. And I'm one of the only fantasy YouTubers who works on Saturdays to get you this type of content to help you win. So make sure to go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now get into our first matchup here. The 49ers at the Giants. I think from a wide receiver standpoint, probably not one you want to get a lot of wide receivers in on. Listen, I like Jackson Dart. I think he's done very well, and I think with his willingness to continue to push the ball down the field, he will have successful options. That's why I would definitely prefer Wan'Dale Robinson in this game. But I'm a little worried about Wan'Dale because I think we started to see with the return of Darius Slayton last week, a little bit of pullback from him down the field working. Darius Slayton actually had a really long touchdown last week get called back, and I think it was disgraceful call. So Darius Slayton is very much in play as well. And the reality is Wan'Dale is only at the top of this pretty clearly because of the fact that I trust his target share more than the others. But when I look over at the San Francisco options, Jawan Jennings and Kendrick Bourne, they're basically the same to me, and I don't really want to play either one of them at this point. Kendrick Bourne has really fallen off and out of favor in this offense. With Jawan Jennings being around, it just kind of creates an issue for whoever's going to be a dominant fantasy wide receiver. If Jennings wasn't there, I'd be in on Kendrick Bourne a lot more because Mac Jones is the quarterback yet again. But since it is both of them, they are both mid-tier flexes, and they are a couple spots higher in my rankings than Darius Slayton. But honestly, he's probably the better upside play, but just doesn't have as safe of a floor as either one of those guys. End of story. This is not a great wide receiver type of game that you want to target in fantasy football. Now, our next matchup is the Los Angeles Chargers at the Tennessee Titans. Listen, to me, I think Ladd McConkey has definitely developed into must-start territory again. I mean, he is their highest upside wide receiver and probably has their safest floor. But I will say, there's going to be weeks where he doesn't do well, and we'll kind of get into that here in a minute because I think Keenan Allen is a little bit better of a flex than Quentin Johnston because, again, what we've seen from QJ is he's kind of been the odd man out with the emergence of Oronde Gadsden. Now, I will say this. Oronde Gadsden is not going to continue to put up these types of numbers every single week. There's going to be weeks where QJ's irrelevant, obviously. There will be weeks where Keenan is the guy who's irrelevant. And believe it or not, there will be weeks where Ladd is the one who's irrelevant. And there's going to be weeks when Gadsden is irrelevant. Bottom line is this. You want a wide receiver attached to, a pass catcher attached to Justin Herbert, which is why I still think that all these guys are flexible. And I'm not overreacting to QJ in particular when he gave us a goose egg last week. I don't think that's going to stand for another week straight. He'll be involved, and it's obviously a fantastic matchup. And then I would also say Chimere DK is the one guy you would want out of Tennessee, but he's a mid-tier flex because you still can't even predict whether he's going to be the number one versus Elick Ayemaner. I mean, Elick Ayemaner, yeah, he's not done much, but he's still been getting a lot of targets, and Van Jefferson is obviously just not a good football player. Well, Elick Ayemaner could be the one to really kind of screw over your upside with Chimere DK. Bottom line is this. Stay away from Titans options unless it's Tyjae Spears or maybe Tony Pollard, and I would play all of these Chargers options over those options. The Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions is our next matchup here. And Amon-Ra St. Brown obviously is a must start. Justin Jefferson, the reality is, man, you're never going to bench him. He's your number one pick on your team, and he does fine. Like, it's not bad this year. It's just obviously not the same level of upside. But he's hitting 4 games. I mean, his 4 games have basically been like 14 to 16 points, which is good. Like, that's not going to crush your week, which is why you kind of need that on your team anyways. So you're going to put JJ in the lineup for sure. But I'll tell you this. I'm not big on the return of JJ McCarthy. I get it. Like, people turned really sour against Wentz for a couple of weeks. I think a lot of people are forgetting how bad J.J. McCarthy was because it can get worse. It can. And I don't know if it's going to get better. It may get worse. I mean, that's why I like J-Mo over Jordan Addison in this one because I love Addison. But you know what the funny thing is? As bad as Wentz was, he was great for Jordan Addison. He was great for him. They had a really good bond, and they had chemistry together. So I don't know what to think about another quarterback coming in here, particularly for the wide receiver 2 on an offense, Jordan Addison. I always say this, backup quarterbacks, and really what I mean by that is quarterback changes are not good for wide receiver 2s in an NFL offense. That's why I'll take J-Mo and that stability and that big play upside still being there. I get it, hasn't hit it as much as Addison has in weeks, but I'll take that this week over Addison because I don't know what to expect with this J.J. McCarthy addition and what he's going to do to this offense, and particularly with Addison because we haven't seen them both play together yet. Atlanta Falcons at the New England Patriots is our next matchup here. London, to me, he's coming back this week. Michael Penix is back. You can go ahead and play him in this matchup, especially when they're probably going to need to throw to keep up with the Patriots defense in this one. Kayshon Boutte is a better flex play than Diggs, to me. And I think this one is going to be interesting to see what the results of this would be on FS Roundup if you go create a start-sit poll. Because to me, Kayshon Boutte, even off of limited volume, has just been the better player than Diggs. And Diggs is not really a downfield red zone threat. He got his first touchdown, I think, last week. Like, that's just not good enough for consistent fantasy upside. I think his floor probably a little bit higher, but his ceiling I don't think is as high as Boutte. So to me, Boutte is the better flex than Diggs. And then Darnell Mooney, I would say, is flexible in this matchup. He's got upside for sure, and with the return of Penix, it could be better. And again, the Patriots are going to outwork the Falcons offense, so the Falcons offense is going to have to keep pace by throwing in this game. Darnell Mooney is a fine flex, and one I would ultimately play over Mac Hollins and Demario Douglas on the Patriots because those guys are just not consistent enough. But I do want to go back to the 2 New England wide receivers, Kayshon Boutte and Stephon Diggs. I'm going to go ahead and post this poll on FS Roundup. So I'm going to look up Kayshon Boutte, and then I'm going to click on chat, and I'm going to click on start a poll for week 9 and add Stephon Diggs to this as well. And I want you to go vote on this poll right now. Honestly, I'm very curious of what everyone would do in this scenario. For me, it's Kayshon Boutte, but I wouldn't blame you if you went ahead and picked Diggs in this one. And by the way, free to vote and free to start your own start-sit polls as well and get live feedback and results from the community on what you should do with your decisions. And if you want the premium subscription where you can get access to my weekly top 250 rankings, the automatic waiver wire tool, and tons of other league-winning features, for $6 a month. We dropped it from $8.88 to $6 a month so everyone in the world could have access to league-winning tools for $6 a month. Go ahead and sign up for that price today. Now, getting into our next matchup here, it's the Indianapolis Colts at the Pittsburgh Steelers. And listen, I think that my philosophy changes a little bit here because DK Metcalf actually rose up a couple spots in my recent rankings update. Now, I think the reason I did it ultimately lies in the fact that when I see 50-point over-unders with Vegas, I usually want to get in on those options. So I have Pittman, obviously he's a must-start, and then DK entered into must-start territory. I will go ahead and play DK in this one. The big play upside is always there. He is important enough from a target perspective. It's just been clunky, and I've been highlighting this in my wide receiver rankings all year. The chemistry between him and Rodgers is not great, and DK drops a lot of passes, man. Trust me. Josh Downs and Alec Pierce, I actually think are pretty decent flexes in this game. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, disgraceful, particularly in the passing game, disgraceful. So you got to play Colts options if you're in a bind. Like, I would play both of those options easily over Chimere DK, 100% of the time, because this defense is terrible and the over-under is great, meaning that the Colts probably have to keep their foot on the gas for a lot of this game because it is in Pittsburgh and it is a must-win for them. So I do think that those options are great. Now, here's the thing. I think since we haven't seen enough of Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin on the field together at the same time, I'm going to stay away from both of them. The tight ends are too involved. DK Metcalf is obviously the number one. So both of these guys could do nothing this week, and you could just be playing them based on the mirage of the big over-under. I don't think it's worth it this week. I would rather see how it goes this week, put them both on the bench, and just play other options from other matchups that we'll go through, and we already have been through. The Denver Broncos at the Houston Texans is our next matchup here, and Nico Collins is barely inside of must-start territory. And the reason why, ultimately, is because Pat Surtain is going to miss this game. So Pat Surtain being out definitely makes it easier on an opposing team's number one wide receiver. So probably for a lot of the game, what we'll see is either he gets double covered or it'll be a lot of Riley Moss. So I do think that Nico Collins probably has a little bit of an opening in this one, and he's always a big play threat and a player that I like, just hasn't been as good this year. So I do think it just kind of squeaked into must-start territory because of Pat Surtain's, exit from this game. Courtland Sutton is right on the border as well, didn't make it because he's got Derek Stingley. And Derek Stingley is one of those corners in the league that is absolutely in play to shut down a number one. Him, Pat Surtain, Trent McDuffie, those types of guys, they factor into a lot of these decisions that I make with wide receivers in matchups. So Sutton draws the bad matchup today, and I do think that kind of opens things up, potentially for Troy Franklin. Now, I will say this, the Texans defense overall, not just with Stingley, they're a great defense. So I do not think that Franklin is a great upside play. But I do think that just because of the Sutton factor with Derek Stingley, that probably does open up some stuff for Troy Franklin to get more targets than him this week. So I do think for that reason, he's a flexible guy. And I'll say this with the Texans receivers. I'm going to bench all of them. And the reason why is because Christian Kirk is coming back into the lineup. So him being back completely throws a monkey wrench into my whole ranking system for the Texans wide receivers. Originally, I would have said, yeah, I think you could play Xavier Hutchinson. I think you could play Jaden Higgins maybe. And Jalen Noel, I think you could play him as well. But with the return of Christian Kirk, I don't want much to do with any of those options outside of Nico Collins. The Chicago Bears at the Cincinnati Bengals is our next matchup. And obviously, Jamar Chase is must start. Either way, even if it was Jake Browning, but it looks like it's going to be Joe Flacco, which is key for Jamar's upside and T's upside as well. Now, Rome Odunze also I do consider a must start. I think particularly with the exit of DeAndre Swift in this offense for this week, I think it makes Rome that much more important in this offense. And it's also a very large over-under as well. I think the Bears need to put up a lot of points, and Rome probably has a really nasty day. Like, really, really nasty monsters. And I say nasty in a good way because I think he could drop 30 on these guys easily. Rome is must start. T. Higgins, though, if it was Jake Browning, I would put DJ Moore over him for sure. But it is not going to be, apparently. So keep an eye on this one over the next, 12, 18 hours or so. But it looks like T is going to be playing with Flacco, which is big for you. So I do think that T. Higgins is in good position this week. I do think that he ultimately has upside every time Flacco plays. But his floor is probably still a little bit lower, I will say. He only had one catch last week. So just keep an eye on this one and how it evolves. But I do think that with Flacco, you can absolutely play T. And DJ Moore and Olamide Zaccheaus, I think you could play both of them. Luther Burden is out of this game. DJ Moore always has a role. It's just very low ceiling type of stuff. So if you just need like a solid flex play this week, I think he's fine. And then Olamide Zaccheaus, I do think is also in play in this one as well. High upside matchup, bad defense. They're both in play. I would say that this is a pretty good matchup for wide receivers on both sides of the ball. The Carolina Panthers at the Green Bay Packers is our next matchup, and there's no must-starts. Obviously, Ted McMillan is going to be my number one because he is the number one by far in Carolina's offense. The return of Bryce Young definitely, I don't think really makes much of a difference from a wide receiver perspective in Carolina because either way, Andy Dalton last week was targeting Ted McMillan a bunch too. So Ted McMillan is the number one. And I think that's the reason why he's got to be the best guy in the matchup. Also, particularly because if this game goes how I think it will go, Carolina's going to need to throw the ball a ton just to try to put up points. So Ted McMillan's the best play in this matchup. And Romeo Doubs, I would say, is second best. Listen, the return of Christian Watson not only kind of hinders him, it also makes Matthew Golden almost benchable. Like, you can bench him, but he was almost a must bench. I'm going to put him in for one final week in bottom end flex territory, but I would much rather have Watson than I would rather have Golden at this point. It's not even close. Like, Watson opens up this offense, and you saw it against the Steelers on Sunday night last week. He opens up that offense in a completely different way than they had been open this entire season. So I do think Watson is right there basically with Romeo Doubs this week. I think Doubs is the better guy because we have seen him get a lot of targets just kind of in a lot of different spots this year, whereas Watson is still kind of just a big play threat. And I do think they'll still limit him in what he's able to do on a weekly basis just by, opportunities that they're going to give him. He's still on the injury report every week, so he's not fully healthy. Doubs is the best option, followed by Watson. And I would say Golden was right there on must bench with Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette in this game. The New Orleans Saints at the Los Angeles Rams. Our 3 o'clock window is going to be a pretty obvious one. Obviously, you play both of the Rams receivers in this one, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. And then the reason, guys, I saw a lot of comments on the wide receiver rankings saying it was disrespectful of me to not rank Olave above a bunch of guys that I didn't rank him over. And keep him basically in the top 15 is what a lot of people wanted me to do. And I'm going to tell you the reason is because I think that with this move to Spencer Rattler to Tyler Shough, it completely changes the game for everybody. Now, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's exactly the same. And Olave continues to get targets out the wazoo. But you never know. Quarterbacks are weird, man. Some quarterbacks, like Carson Wentz, did really well with Jordan Addison. You don't know if that's going to continue with J.J. McCarthy. Do you see my point? Which is that Rashid Shaheed is every bit as in play as Olave is to me. So I think Rashid Shaheed, that's the reason he was in the top 30 this week. And the only thing that could take him out is if he doesn't play. Because apparently he's questionable, and as of the time of the filming, we don't know if he's going to play. So obviously, if he doesn't play, Olave is a must-start guy as well. But given the fact that we don't know enough about Tyler Shough and what his tendencies are, I'm going to have Olave exactly where I ranked him the first time. That's the reason. End of story right here. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Las Vegas Raiders is our next matchup. No must starts. Brian Thomas Jr. moved a little bit like in my rankings after the news that Travis Hunter got placed on the IR. He didn't move that much though, because here's the problem. Targets were never the issue with Brian Thomas Jr. Chemistry and drops have been the issue. That doesn't just go away without Travis Hunter. So, Brian Thomas Jr. needs to prove it yet before he gets into must-start territory. But I will tell you this, I am playing him over someone like Deebo Samuel. Like, I have him in a league on ESPN, and I'm going to be playing Brian Thomas Jr. this week because the targets are there and the matchup is good. He just needs to prove himself to get back into must-start territory. You can absolutely play Ladd McConkey over him, Devontae Adams over him. He needs to prove it first before he's back into must-start, but obviously the upside is 100% there. But I would say this, I would play Parker Washington over both of the options in Las Vegas Raiders. I really would. I think Parker Washington, he's actually had a lot of games this year where he's been getting targeted a lot, even with Hunter. So I do think that he's going to be the guy, not Diami Brown, who's going to be interesting in this one. I would play him over Trey Tucker, over Jacoby Myers, who I do think are also mid-tier flex options. But clear this up. Trey Tucker is the better option than Jacoby Myers for a couple of different reasons. Number one, he's proven it over the season. Number two, Jacoby Myers doesn't want to be there. And number three, this is where I think things get interesting. So to start with Diami Brown, I do think that he is a guy that could easily be a better option than Parker Washington. Keep an eye on it, but I'm not going to play him. But with these Raiders receivers, Pete Carroll made a comment before, I think after the bye week, and basically said, we're going to have a youth movement here coming out of the bye. That to me is going to suggest that Jack Betch could be more involved. And remember this name? Dante Thornton Jr. Keep an eye. Do not play either of these guys. Keep an eye on them though, because if they do really go forward with this youth movement, I believe that both of those guys are in play moving forward and possibly in this matchup, but I'm not taking the chance right now. The Kansas City Chiefs at the Buffalo Bills. Big matchup, big points. You play these options. Obviously, Rashee Rice stays in your lineup until the end of time. Khalil Shakir is the best option outside of him. I do think that he will be very involved because he has been every week, and Buffalo is definitely viewing him as their number one. Xavier Worthy, I would only play over Keon because he's just better. But I maintain this. I've been saying this for months. He is not healthy. He is not healthy. We have not seen an upside gain from him yet because he has not been healthy the entire season. been kind of a lost season for him, unfortunately. But the reason I play him in pretty decent territory is because obviously the matchup is great. Keon Coleman, I do think this is typically one of those games where you could see a pop play from him. I do not think that he's a bad play whatsoever. I think he's a relatively high-end flex option this week. I'm not going to blame you if you don't want to. We've seen a lot to suggest that you shouldn't play him, but I do think he's 100% in play this week because this matchup, if you think back to the Ravens game where he had a good one, well, in that high-scoring matchup, he was important. I could see the same thing being the case against the Kansas City Chiefs. And then Hollywood Brown, only because of matchup, I think is a low-end to mid-end flex play. But I would bench everybody else, which is basically nobody outside of Juju Smith-Schuster and guys like Tyrell Shavers who just aren't involved enough. The Seattle Seahawks at the Washington Commanders, our Sunday night game. Obviously, you play Jack Smith-Njigba. The guy's been a freaking monster. And he is a superstar wide receiver in the same category, basically, as a guy like Justin Jefferson. Don't hate me for saying it. He's the real deal, man. Deebo Samuel, I think, is the best option. And I will say this. Jaden Daniels is key to the upside of these pass catchers. But at the same time, Deebo makes me really concerned because I don't think he's fully healthy either. So that's the reason Deebo is not a must start. I would love to play Deebo. I really would. Like Deebo, I was big on him in the offseason. I was proven right for a lot of the early part of the season, but he slowed down because of quarterback inconsistencies with Marcus Mariota in and out of the lineup and because he's been injured. So Deebo, high-end flex, but this matchup is also not great. But I would play Luke McCaffrey at the next flex spot because I do think, again, with Jaden being back and the exit of Terry McLaurin opens things up for him. Now, here's the problem with these Seattle wide receivers. I think Torrey Horton should be played over Cooper Kupp if Kupp plays. And by the way, added to the injury report late in the week. So Cooper Kupp, probably not looking good. Like, I don't think it looks good. Either way, though, I would play Horton because I think Horton's the better player personally. But he has not been involved enough on a weekly basis to really supplant Cooper Kupp on a consistent flex basis. But this week, I do think it's different with the injury to Kupp if he plays at all. I would still think Kupp is playable because this is a matchup you could take advantage of, but I would play Torrey Horton at this point over Cooper Kupp. The Arizona Cardinals at the Dallas Cowboys, our Monday night matchup. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, you play them both, and there's a revelation on this one as well. With Kyler, it was supposed to be a high-scoring matchup as well. It was already a 50-point over-under. Now it's Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett was deemed the starter earlier Saturday morning, so I do believe that, particularly with Trey McBride, he's a great option. Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't move in my rankings. I think he's still just a high upside flex, boom or bust. Like, you could play him, obviously, and I wouldn't play any of the other options in that offense. But I do think that the game could go very high scoring in this one because Dallas' defense is obviously beatable, but I am not going to put Marvin Harrison Jr. higher in my rankings because it really doesn't matter. This guy's a head case, and it's completely dependent on him if he actually gets it done. So let me know what your wide receiver room looks like heading into week 9. And if you want to see the top 30 wide receiver rankings fully for this week, click on this video right here.